This video is about graphing externalities, so let's get going. We'll start with a definition. An externality, you may recall, is a cost or a benefit borne by a third party, that is a person or a group not involved in the market transaction. And more specifically, a negative externality that we'll be focusing on this class is a cost borne by a third party, such as pollution. So we're going to begin graphing externalities with the marginal benefit and marginal cost curves that we've introduced in earlier videos. And notice here that the marginal cost is labeled MPC. So that's the marginal private cost. That's to be distinguished from what's known as the marginal social cost, the MSC. So the difference between the marginal private cost we've been talking about up until this point and the marginal social cost, which is the total cost to all of society, is this externality. So in other words, the marginal private cost, if we're talking about a good that creates pollution, the marginal private cost is the cost to the firm of producing that good. So the private individual firm is what's incorporated into the calculation of that marginal cost. Whereas the marginal social cost includes those costs of production plus the costs of the externality to society. So the damage that the pollution does to humans and ecosystem services would be incorporated into that calculation of the externality. That would be added to the private cost, and that is what gives us our social cost. So what we learned from comparing these two costs, the private and the social cost, is that markets are going to leave us here. We would assume that a firm considers their own private costs when making these calculations of how much quantity to produce and the price to sell it at. And that calculation is going to leave us at the point where the marginal cost equals the marginal benefit, or that quantity of the market that we've noted here. And that we know would be different than what would be happening if we were to incorporate the cost to society into those calculations. So if we were to think about the externality and incorporate that into decision making, or use the marginal social cost in our determination of what would be optimal for society, we would end up with this outcome called QO and PO, the socially optimal price and quantity. And what's interesting when we put it in this context is that what we see is that the quantity that the market's going to produce, when they don't have to account for their cost to society and to ecosystem services, those pollution costs, that quantity would be greater than what would be socially optimal. So what graphing externalities does is this provides us with a justification for the role of government and policy. We can see where the quantity should be at compared to what's happening in the market. And these are what's known as market failures. This is where we fail to maximize the total net benefits to society. We only maximize those total net benefits to the private firm. We also can see that negative externalities suggest that there's too much produced. And therefore, this graphing or modeling of externalities provides not only justification for a role of government, but also provides us with a target for policy. Not only do we know that we're producing too much and we should be producing less than QM, we have a target, and that would be QO, the socially optimal level.